All right. Thank you so much for tuning into the newly formed Canadian Podcast Companion with two hosts, myself, Shane, and my co host, Dan.
Howdy.
Today, we have a very special topic that's quite near and dear to me. Dan started out as a skeptic, but we're going to talk about float tanks, aka the sensory deprivation chamber, aka the isolation tank. Now, for those of you who don't know, float tanks, they started out as a way for people to separate their mind from their body. And I'm really big on it. And Dan had his first experience with the tank today. So tell me what you know about your about float tanks and your experience.
The only thing I really knew is like a bit we talked about before. If the water is the same temperature as your body, you're floating, you're not really like physically touching anything, and you can't see or like anything. So you're deprived of senses, and so all you can really do is just be alone with your own brain. Uh,
And
yeah.
it's weird when you do it, right? Because I know I was quite hype and I've been selling this on you for I'd say probably 7 years now, maybe nine, but yeah, quite some time I've been hyping up the benefits of the tank. And um I know I'm a sucker for quite a few things, and we're kind of closing in on the Joe Rogan territory, but I liked it before Rogan, so in his face
Have you ever seen a chimpanzee in a float
doing DMT.
tank? Yeah. Have you ever floated in a tank on DMT with a chimpanzee without any hair? They're muscular. They're swole.
Yeah, so I think the tank has a special place or a special meaning for most people. And I guess I really want to talk to you about it. So
Well,
uh,
let me first ask you to completely throw your rhythm off. Tell me about like what your perception of the community of floaters is like, because I know you probably you read a lot about this online. I don't know if there's a floaty Reddit subreddit, but if there is, I feel like you're probably moderator. What's the general vibe within the the people who love this shit? How do they talk about floating and what it means to them?
Interesting. Subculture, I feel like it's quite broadly spread. I think you'll have the hippies, you'll have the performance athletes who are big on visualization. You'll find people with trauma. You'll find people who are searching for alternatives to get high that don't want to um, chase drugs, and you'll find people who want to enhance their high, and then just find curious people who do this. But I guess to look at your second question or second part of it is, um, I did quite a bit of research on floating. Prior to that, just I was a part of that crowd that wanted to look for ways to expand their consciousness, get a feeling of high without turning to drugs. And so my exposure to the tank was just wanting to explore those thoughts and being a part of that hippie crowd as well. So there was the idea of I can't live with myself that Eckhart Tolle kind of speaks of, and I wanted to know what it was like to be by myself. And the tank was a way for me to do that. I did some research, and when I read it, that this is the closest experience you can get to separating yourself from your body. That's kind of how I knew I wanted to try this out, and that led me down that path of floating.
Interesting. So, it's sort of like a spiritual slash meditative mental exploration for yourself. It's like it's like meditation on steroids.
Yeah, I that's
Or would you go like even further of like it's like mushrooms on mushrooms,
mushrooms on mushrooms.
like shrooms on shrooms or something? I don't know.
Yeah, we
Like
have a mutual friend who's really big into energy and meditation, and he referred to it as meditation on steroids, and I definitely agree with that. It's I'm not really a big person into meditation or any of that cross your legs and say om kind of person, but
right. Did he say it was meditation on steroids or meditation on drugs?
meditation on drugs.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That sounds more like the type of thing
Yeah.
he'd say.
There was a phase in my life where I was looking at looking into silence, being comfortable with yourself, exploring your like the self and I, and books like In Praise of Slow, where you're looking at how fast the world is going. And when I discovered the tank, that was kind of my segue in. And then I know when I first had my um, time in the tank, when I left, like the world was so loud to me that I was sold, and been floating ever since. And I kind of spread my message as a part of the floating cult.
Yeah. Try and rope me into your cult. How
Yeah,
much do you guys teeth?
a lot.
I can't do higher than 10%. I mean, that's what the Catholic Church is making me pay now, and I gotta go with at least the lower bid.
Yeah, they had floating tanks in Moose Jaw, hey, when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in 2010. Yeah.
So are they like a relatively new phenomenon? My only exposure to float tanks before you was the Simpsons episode, and I can't really remember when that episode came out.
Yeah, it was in the I want to say the 70s, perhaps even earlier.
Okay.
I know there's talks about it before, back in the 80s and stuff like that. But the original tank wasn't a bed of water or a room full of water. It was like an actual swimming pool with salt water, and like there's a device like in the Saw movies for your head to float. So you're kind of like in a vice grip, and you were floating vertically, and that was like the original tank. But then they discovered that you could just make it horizontal and like fill that shit up with salt water and have it float. But yeah, I have no idea how far it goes back, but it definitely like exploded in popularity with the Joe Rogan era, when he mentioned the benefits of it. So,
Oh, is this actually one of his things? He
that's
goes,
his contribution to society. Is he made it more popular than.
interesting. I didn't know. I just assumed we were. Never mind. Cut that.
All good, but I don't know. I floated before Rogan talked about it, so
Okay.
and his.
So you're like in the indie floater.
Yeah, I listened to. I floated before. It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that people float, I don't like it, just because it's.
Well, it became corporatized, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It used to be about community.
Yeah, exactly. Like now, like the water's changed and the salt is just not the same, right?
Yeah, they're totally they're scamming you on the salt these days. They're not honest.
Yeah, it's not really.
In the old days, they give you extra salt just to give you extra floating experience. You know,
they fill that up with like Himalayan salt now. It's just some other shit.
just cheap table salt that they can just put in a cowlick.
Yeah, like yeah, not the same. All right, so let's talk about the tank. So I kind of gave you my experience with the tank, but I know you're a contrarian, you're a skeptic. So
Well, I think I'm pretty open minded about float tanks because I do believe meditation has like therapeutic effects and should be part of like a healthy person sort of daily experience. That's not to say I meditate every day, not even close, but it's as a practice I try to do when I think it would be good to do.
Okay.
So I kind of went into it with the mentality of, oh, this at minimum it will be a meditation aid. It'll be helpful for just kind of easing my mind. I was skeptical on some like broader claims, like it's going to be like doing drugs.
Yeah, the one I don't believe is for every hour in the tank is equal to 4 hours of rest. That equation I don't believe in. But you do feel
I feel like
well rested when you leave the tank, though.
Yeah. No, I definitely came out like very relaxed and happy. My first impression though of walking into it is like the tank is huge. Like we could fit like 3 people in there comfortably.
You were in the room or the pod?
The pod.
Like the one that closes above you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there other
There,
pods
yeah,
or
there's
tanks?
yeah, there's a room. So there's three types of tanks. I've been in all three. There's one where you're kind of like in a freezer and it closes vertically above you, like it's a square window
Okay.
and it's shut. So you're kind of like a John Doe in a morgue or some meat
Right, right.
like directly above you. Or not directly, but more of an angle.
Made specially for agoraphobes.
Yeah. There's the one that kind of opens up like a clamshell.
Yeah, that's the one I had.
That's one, yeah. And then there is a room where it's literally a room full of water, a step, and then like a slant that you kind of slide into to
Interesting.
get to your float. So my preference is the pod because when you get into the room, it does let in a little bit of light, and my preference is the full sensory deprivation.
Right.
I know that some people when they float, you get I guess when you get introduced, right, they have to kind of accommodate you and your need for stimulation. So they play like binary beats or binaural beats, however you call it. And then they have the lights on, you turn off the lights, you phase into music. I need the full thing.
Right.
But anyways, so we were talking about your experience with the tank. So walk me through it. Like,
All right, all right. So I walk in. So I brought the tank just because that was like my first strong impression after walking. It was like, wow, this is a big tank. This is nothing like the Simpsons episode where you're just in a coffin. It's like very sci-fi. I had immediate like images of like, Ghost in the Shell. I'm going to like lose my brain and my body's just an empty shell or something. It's very cool imagery. It looks very sci-fi. Yeah, get in, feels nice. Floating is really cool. I remember like at the start they like there's like you can turn off the light yourself and the music starts playing. It's like very calming zen, typical like Crystal Lady type relaxation music.
mhm. And so when you're hearing this, wait, hold on, let's pause. When you're hearing this crystal relaxation music, are you thinking this is bullshit or you're
I really enjoyed it. So they gave you the option of either you get going with like a head pillow or not, whether depending on how wet you want your head, right?
Mhm.
And so I went without. And so I went in and I heard the music first when I was above water, and it was like just typical sauna music. But then when you go underwater, it gets like distorted and reverbed. And I just remember thinking like, oh man, this like in the dark here, like this sounds just like listening to post rock. This is like a very like good feeling, like just heavy reverb. You don't get like I don't know the exact musical terms for it, but you get this like layered sound that through coming from underwater that makes it a little bit trippy, and it was a good vibe. I kind of wish I could like request music if I could go back again. I was just like, hey, put on this album. Like, I want this chill this album in this tank.
Okay, so they play on this funky music that's at different frequencies for your ear, and it kind of gives you like an auditory kind of illusion, and also that's
I don't know.
to float.
Like all the post rock music I listen to is like big and there's like very long droning notes. I feel like the water kind of makes the notes drone on,
and it kind of like puts you in the mood to meditate, puts you in the mood to go, all right, we're about to go on a journey, or I'm expected to go on a journey, and it sets the tone for you to go. So you do have the option of keeping the music going or letting it fade out, and I'm assuming
how do you pick that option? I kind of
there's a button, the same button that you use to turn on the lights and turn it off. The opposite side has music on, music off.
Oh, okay.
So normally the lights will I turn off right away, and I just let the music fade off. So I'm assuming the same thing happened with you, right?
Yeah.
You spent about 10 minutes in the tank, and
I got about 10 minutes of music and it fades away.
so let's talk about the 10 minutes, because this is kind of my shit that I fucking love with the tank. In this 10 minutes, you're kind of getting used to the tank, because when you lower yourself in, it's only about a foot of water, and you're kind of tempted to explore the tank a little bit, like physically. So you'll play with the water because it's cool that you can't tell the difference between the air temperature and the water, and so you kind of like
Right.
splash your hands a little bit, raise your finger above to break the surface tension.
Yeah.
Um, you're kind of still creating waves, and you're kind of bouncing from side to side, trying to get yourself stabilized, find a nice floating position, arms fully extended, in the hands up freeze position by your legs.
Yeah. I found myself kind of rocking through different like centers of balance, just like seeing how my body floats with like if I twist it different ways. And so
Okay.
I'd be like, no, just like shifting my weight around like a little stupid fishy and like trying to like uh, kind of hover my way around the board just by like adjusting my weight
Right.
around the water.
And eventually the goal is to just find a spot to be comfortable and to be still enough that you
Yeah.
go, all right, I got 1 hour of stillness. I don't want to be splashing around because the whole point is to be separated mind from body. So 10 minutes go by and the music fades out, and you get to the point where you think, am I hearing music or am I imagining it? And the first few minutes of your float of pure silence and darkness, it's a little bit different. And for me, anyways, my mind starts playing tricks on me, and I kind of want to know what the opening part of that float was for you.
Like you said, like you settle down, you're not playing around with the water as much. Um, I just sort of I had fun, kind of like opening and closing my eyes, seeing how much I actually could see, how dark it actually was. Um, and then I just sort of like did meditation stuff. Fo- I always like just focus on your breathing, try to not entirely stop your brain, but like slow down your brain a little bit.
Okay. Did you get so some of the stuff with me is just getting used to stillness and stimulation. So whenever the tank goes out, I find my mind playing tricks on me and goes, "Oh, you're itchy. You need to scratch." Do you normally breathe with your mouth open or mouth shut when you're lying down? What's it like to? Did I swallow my saliva? You should wiggle your toes. You should test to see if that door opens or not.
Right.
Where are the light buttons? Did any of those mind games start playing with you, or you kind of
Not really, no.
okay, interesting.
Like
You're more
not
grounded than me.
yeah. Like I found it very relaxing and like I wasn't uncomfortable and at this point I wasn't even like no, I wouldn't there was moments of boredom, but like I wasn't bored. I was still like excited for this experience. I don't think like mine was like playing tricks on me. I just felt like felt like I was in the same vibe as like days where I've spent out on a hammock reading a book or chilling in a hot tub in the mountains. It was just like a very peaceful, pleasant, uh, introspective moment.
Okay, that's fair. So you're sitting there, you're floating. What's going on through your mind? Give me your thought process about this. Like, can you take me through your float? Because I know everyone's uh, experience is different. I don't necessarily need to know your thought process, but take us through your float and what's it like.
What was I even thinking? I'm trying to remember what I think I was thinking. No, I was trying to imagine what an hour sitting in this tank would actually feel like. Yeah, basically like just calming, relaxed experience until maybe 15 minutes in, and I start to notice like I'm getting like more uncomfortable because I figured out two things. One is like without the headrest. Do you ever go with the headrest or do you go just like
I
walk in, float?
I walk in and float. I've learned how to float and learned how to keep my body still.
So my issue was if I like lie like flatter, my skull because it's heavier, it sinks like deeper into the water.
Mhm.
And if I stay in that position long enough, like I can feel the crank in my neck. So my neck is like bending backwards a little bit more than is like comfortable. But then if I like put my so then I did like put my arms kind of behind my head to like make my skull float a little bit higher, so it might relieve my neck. My legs would start to sink, and I could feel my back slowly arching upwards, which is like super minor. Like I wouldn't really notice it or like by no means uncomfortable. But when you're sitting in a tank where like you you don't have much to think about, and there's like you're kind of focused entirely on yourself, you notice like, oh, not entirely comfortable, not entirely comfortable. So I found about halfway through, I found myself like kind of adjusting my position a lot, just trying to find like a perfect balance point.
Okay.
So,
Keep going.
and I think that was like the start of me like kind of losing my relaxation vibe. Because what happened next is I got salt water in my eyes, and that was not fun.
Yeah. Use a water bottle to spray
Yeah, yeah,
relief. It helps.
yeah. It helps, but
So
I just remember thinking, I'm like, salt in the eyes is definitely like not relaxation.
for sure. So you're saying that this was uncomfortable. Is that a possibility of you actually being uncomfortable, or do you give any consideration that this is part of the head games that the tank kind of plays with you?
It could be part of the head games for sure.
Okay.
And like I said, like it's not super uncomfortable. It was just uncomfortable enough that I felt like I had to like float a different way. Maybe it's just me being bored and just wanting to float a different way. Like
You
maybe my body's like my brain's just going like it's like well like you said like with an itch. But also it could just be when you're floating for like 10 minutes and your neck's in one position, be sore.
Yeah, so I think that the idea of learning how to float or figuring out the tank is a phrase that comes up in the float community. So
Interesting.
it'd be
So I was floating wrong.
or you weren't not floating wrong, but you just haven't found the best way for you to float.
Right.
So did you end up using the pillow?
No, I didn't. It wasn't so uncomfortable enough that I wanted to like exit the tank and grab it because it was like outside of the pod and like on the other side of the room or whatever.
Okay, interesting.
And
Okay.
I just felt like as annoying as like my body position was, like exiting the pod would kind of like break the. I'd feel like I'd almost be like restarting from base one if I exit the tank and try to go back in.
Right. Okay. So
So I'm still in the zone here. Like
okay.
I'm still enjoying this experience.
Okay. So you eventually figure it out, and what happens?
I just sat in a tank for like another 20 minutes.
And then the lights came on.
Yeah.
Showered up and you
So
left.
there was like definitely moments where I remember thinking like, okay, I feel myself getting bored. I have to like kind of mentally recompose myself and like just like, all right, like, you're stuck in here. Like relax, chill.
Hmm.
But like there were still moments where I'm like, okay, I don't know how long an hour here it is, but like it feels like it's this is going to be a long time.
But ultimately, you do know when your time is up. Am I right?
No, I was surprised.
You're surprised? So
Yeah.
with me,
I felt like I had like a mini version of like people that are like stuck in a cell by themselves and they like lose track of day and nights. Except for like on a much smaller scale, like I lost track of like minutes. Because I was times I'm like, this feels like a really long time, but when the time actually came, I'm like, oh no, that actually seems short for like 60 minutes for a full hour.
interesting. I feel you need to go again then to get the full benefits. I feel
Maybe.
based off your description of it, I feel that you haven't figured out the tank yet then.
Yeah, maybe.
Because we had an initial conversation about this, and I refer to hallucinations that you get in the tank. I refer to emotional journeys and scary thoughts, and you knowing when your time's up in the tank. So,
Yeah, no. No big revelations or big like I don't even come up with like strong emotions. I just feel like I had a really nice peaceful meditation.
did you decompress after in the little room?
No. because
So
I felt actually like really good. I felt refreshed. Like it's like, oh, okay. Like I kind of feel like I want to go out and do something.
okay, you
I
felt
don't. I felt energized. It's a good way to put it.
all right. Okay, so I think you need to become a regular and go a few more times so you get your breakthrough. But that sounds like a very solid start. Would you go again?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'd pay $80 to go again,
Dang,
but like
cheaper ones though. But
at the end of the day, I would rank my experience pleasant, relaxing, but definitely no giant breakthroughs like how I hear the way I hear you talk about it. I don't think I've had an experience like what you experienced.
yeah, so maybe I could talk about my experience.
I'm open minded to it's just I didn't achieve it.
Yeah, so I hallucinate in the tank sometimes. It's
So
pretty
tell me what you mean by like hallucinate. Like it's a very visual hallucination.
uh an experiential hallucination.
Okay, explain.
So they call it the isolation tank because you're without your senses, right? Um but what I always say to people is you also lose your sense of time and your sense of direction. So sometimes I hallucinate.
Right.
I get the feeling that I am floating vertically. So I get that touch, that feeling sensation of floating vertically, and that is that's like a mini hallucination to me.
Hmm.
That happens when I'm settling into the tank. Sometimes I feel that I'm spinning and the mind plays tricks on you and you want to make sure that you didn't spin, and you touch the door, you turn on the light and you open the door and you close it. Okay, I'm not spinning. It's just my head playing tricks on me. Shit, gotta restart the tank. Um Sometimes I feel that the music that plays in, when it fades out, I can still hear it. And it's going on longer than I feel is 10 minutes. And I'm going, am I imagining this music or not? And I'm still hearing that like kind of I have no
Do
way.
you ever like take your head out of the water? Like I assume your ears are in the water. You like take them out and listen to it, or you just like embrace the hallucination, whether
I
it's
I
real
am
or not.
when I first did the tank, I did all these things. I stood up, turned on the lights, check the door, close the lights, restart,
Right.
stand up, push the button. Oh shit, that actually is the music. Push it again, turn it off. So I made all these mistakes in the tank. Sense of directions going, I touch the walls. All these things that your head kind of plays with yourself. But as I got better with the tank, I started to get these more visual hallucinations or experiential ones. And so when I say hallucination, it's not like I'm tripping out on drugs or something like that. It's I liken it to like a dream. You're dreaming, but you're not. So you're constantly in that in and out state.
Hmm. So when you think you're in a dream, like what are you dreaming about?
Anything could be things that happened in the past,
Okay.
some really random stuff.
It's not just like an alternate version of you being in a tank.
uh, maybe who knows what it is, right? It might be
Right.
insect.
I'm just thinking like, yeah, okay.
But you know that feeling that you get when you're in a dream and you know you're dreaming and you have that realization that you are.
Yeah.
You're kind of in that half in, half out. That's that feeling that I get, and um, you kind of know you are in that state, and you're constantly getting in and out. So you're constantly like falling asleep in that tank and waking up, falling asleep and waking up. It's that repeated process and these very different dreams that you get where you kind of come to, and then that leads you to a thought process, and you have to stop the thinking and then fall back asleep in that tank or go back into that dream state. And those are the hallucinations you get. And sometimes I walk away with such strong emotions that I leave the tank early. Other times I stick with it and ride with it. And sometimes the dreams get so vivid that one time I swiped like my hand and I made a splash in the water. I was like, oh shit, that is not real. Very, yeah, they get
Weird.
powerful, and I feel that the more you do it, the better you get at floating in the tank.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. A lot of things I've read just about meditation in general, like it is like a skill that you have to develop, right? You're not just going to like sit quietly for 20 minutes and like feel at peace with the world. Like it's a form of work in a way. Any sort of form of meditation and like deep, like introspective, like mental exercise is going to be an, both a skill and an art. It doesn't need to be this sort of scientific Freudian analysis of your deep psyche. It's a creative, skill based, work based. You get in what you put out, or yeah, you get out what you put in. Sort of experience. It makes sense to me. I'm not a skeptic entirely. Just,
Okay, I'm glad that would have broke my heart. But yeah, sometimes like you have dreams, you know, when you
but
wake up.
based on the evidence, it's no breakthroughs. It's still not
Okay.
scientific.
Well, I think yeah, sometimes you know you have a dream, you end up feeling really sad about it or angry or really happy. I
Yeah.
feel it's the same thing that happens when I'm in the tank, and um, I think my first time floating, you know, I hit success right away, and then my second and third time, I was kind of going into there with
So
expect.
when you say you hit success right away, like it's just like right after the music goes off, you're just like, oh, this is amazing, or like
No,
what do you mean? What's success here?
yeah, that's actually a really deep question. What is success? But you can't really attach something. So I went into
Well,
that.
you said it, so explain yourself.
All right. Well, let me do that. All right. Uh, so when I first went to that tank, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't have any goals in mind, just other than floating. And so it was just be still, and this is what it feels like floating. So when I was uncomfortable in the water, I was like, oh, this is a part of the process because I've never done it before. Floating with my hands by my side, which is something I would never do now because like it slumps your shoulders forward, was oh, like just feeling tension in your shoulders, it's normal. Eventually you'll get used to it. Well, you do get used to it because you could sleep in any position. Well, I can anyways. And I got that in and out of dream state kind of vibe right away, just because I wasn't attached to anything. It wasn't attached to any previous experiences.
Right.
And so when I left that tank and I went to that,
So how sure are you just weren't actually falling asleep like on and off again?
would it matter what? I mean, it's still accomplishing that goal of just your
Oh
constant.
yeah, but no, it's still
So
fine.
that's actually a
But
bit.
like,
No, it.
do you think you're falling asleep, or is it no illusion?
I have no idea, but being that it was my first float, it didn't matter to me. Now on my second and third floats, that's where I ran into that issue. Was I fell asleep in the tank and I thought, shoot, I'm spending money to sleep. This is not a good look. And then, oh, I should be feeling this way. It's not a good look. And so I had expectations tied to my float, just as if you had
Right.
expectations tied to your meditation. You're not going to get the thing, right? The whole goal of trying to achieve nirvana is you can't actually achieve that Zen like state with you striving for it. It just kind of, you need to let go of the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my first one was really great. Floats 2 and 3, I fell asleep and I started attaching outcomes to it, and then it was kind of a process of slowly figuring out the tank again. Okay, um, don't float with your hands by your side and slump your shoulders. You lean your head way too far back, it cranks your neck. Also, you go back a bit further where your neck isn't really cranked, and water starts dripping into your eyes, and it fucking hurts. Um, Stuff like that. So um, it took like a series of floats to figure it out, but once I did, it ended up being back to that first time floating again, where um, I I felt blissful, I felt high, and just calm. The most mental work or accomplishments mentally I've had in one session of the tank than I have in years of my life.
Interesting. Sorry, I kind of want to go back to something because this kind of like popped in my brain, and I was kind of processing it as you were talking. Um, how often are you alone with your own thoughts. I remember actually I was in the tank and I remember thinking about like this is just an exercise in being alone in like with your thoughts. How often do you think you're alone with your thoughts in like a typical day?
I don't
How
think
often are you just kind of like staring off to space and thinking?
so. I'm a daydreamer. 100% I am. But are you truly with your thoughts if you are with your screen? You hear something in the background, you're bouncing your knee, you're rubbing your hands together, you're scratching your arm. Um, all those things are security blankets, little ways that you can kind of comfort yourself with your thoughts. If you're rubbing your arm, you're thinking of something uncomfortable. All things that you can use to subtly distract yourself, and you're not being truly with your thoughts, is my takeaway. So while
So do you think so if you were to go out and say like a park and just chill under the stars and be alone with your thoughts for 2 hours, whatever, alone in nature in a comfortable place, do you feel like that would still be a very different mental experience from like floating?
I would say yes, it would be a different, but also beneficial. They're beneficial in different ways.
Okay.
So I think there was a study done, and it might be all bullshit or not, but I tend to believe is that when you're out in nature and like true nature, right? You're not looking at a picture, but when you're out,
Yeah.
like actually in a field, you're out seeing the stars, out in the woods. There's a healing factor to it, and it has a positive benefit on your mentality and your emotional state.
Yeah.
I feel that being alone in your thoughts that way, it's definitely great for you. But being without that stimulation and separating mind from body is a completely different thing.
Okay. Because like I would definitely like that's my experience from the tank was sort of like I felt like I just hung out in nature for like a few hours and thought about things.
Like that peaceful serenity kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Peaceful, not necessarily peaceful and like serenity, but like because like like thoughts can go in different emotional twists and turns, but just the yeah, it's in like a you're creating like a mental safe place in a way. You're at complete comfort with yourself and your with your thought process.
yeah.
Sorry, my cat is harassing me.
No, it's all good. I have a chair that's going on this week and back and forth. I've been fucking with the mic leaning forward and back. So I feel like a large part of the audio will be cut, but it's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an interesting thing to say. I don't know how I feel about floating, but I do know that I thoroughly enjoy it. And if I had unlimited resources or wealth and access to it, I would make that a part of my lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely see the appeal. I'd be interested in trying it more. But
Okay, so I guess for our listeners, and I guess we can kind of close this off because we've been chatting for about an hour. Float tanks, yay or nay? And do you want to try a group float, or do you feel that you'd want to practice floating by yourself?
are these questions for the audience or for me?
For you.
Okay. I got confused for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a cool experience, but the benefits I got from that one time aren't so great that I feel like I feel compelled to make it part of like my daily or my everyday life.
Okay. I looked at building my own tank. It's like $40,000. I was like, that's totally worth it. It's like, are you get a float tank or a jacuzzi? Definitely a float tank. 100%. Okay, so I guess second question is, would you be open to floating with someone?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I think that we might have to do like a follow-up episode or keep this one in the pocket till that happens. Okay, wait.
Actually, that's not a terrible idea.
Yeah. Last question here. For those, since you mentioned that financially doesn't make sense, but you can see the benefit of it. What would you recommend to our audience as an alternative to floating, for them to improve or manage their mental and emotional states?
Meditate, hang out on hammocks, go for nature walks. I'm a
Fishing.
big fan of hammocks. Like every summer, I set up a hammock and like we'll spend days just swinging, reading books, and like kind of just thinking to myself.
Yeah, I have the similar I guess like wonder for me anyways. It's if I could find an alternative to floating, um it's just staring off into a lake.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, definitely.
like that when you're surrounded by nature, like most beautiful thing ever. Something about water
Yeah,
just fascinates you, right? Just like all right.
the water, and I think it's like the reflections, the whole like because when you kind of think about it, like reflections are kind of a pretty like crazy visual effect. It's like no, if you saw like a no a reflection of a mountain in the waves through a ripple of the waves on drugs, people would be this is the best drug ever. But it happens in everyday life. You just have to sit down and appreciate it and with the vibes, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Oh, dude. Did they make you fill out that waiver saying that you won't float on drugs? I've always wanted to float on weed.
That yeah, I do it. Guy, have you ever like floated on weed? What's the term? A psychonaut? We're like astronauts for the mind, man. We have to like scientifically explore it. Psychonauts.
For sure. I don't think our audience wants to know that we're redditors. Otherwise, I think we're complete losers. They hear us talk, they know we're complete losers, so it's all good.
Oh yeah, that's totally fair.
All right. So I think on that note, we will end the podcast. Hope you learned a lot about floating, meditation, and introspection. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.